The base is dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down Here. It's a Tuesday. It's August 4th. It's a Tuesday Thoughts edition of the show. You can join in by tweeting at us at Soccer Down Here. You can email us, soccerdownhere@gmail.com. You can hang out in the main room on Twitch, twitch.tv/soccerdownhere. I want to hear your thoughts on really anything in the soccer world. It's a weird one today because we've got the promotion playoff in England, Brentford and Fulham. We'll get you set for that. That'll be this afternoon on ESPN+. We've got all the silly season starting to ramp up in Europe. A lot of players being mentioned with moves right now. We've got the silly season in MLS starting to ramp up with players being mentioned with moves. An update on a move involving Atlanta United potentially. All kinds of stuff. We've got updates on coughing and what that means in terms of cards. We've got updates on all kinds of different things. So wherever you want to take it this morning, we will go there with you. Lots and lots and lots of stuff. Chris Ashley's all about Brentford in the playoff match today. He says he doesn't care if they pinch their players or not. That was a revelation we had on Soccer Over There last night.
Yep.
And I did see the incident that I think it was Kefsey who was talking about Brentford's manager trying to start some nonsense with a throw-in. He was trying to start some nonsense with a throw-in. That was a little ridiculous. I'm pulling for Fulham here, and there's really no immense logic behind it. Fulham is a team that I've probably paid a good bit of attention to over the years. Brian McBride, one of my all-time favorite players. He went there. Bocanegra played there. Dempsey played there. Casey Keller played there. Marcus Hahnemann played there. You've had a bunch of Americans come through Fulham. We had a good friend of Soccer in the Streets who worked with Fulham's youth academy and some community programming as well. So I have a Fulham Puma jacket probably from 2005.
Nice.
I guess that means I have to pull for Fulham today. So Brentford's a great story in that they haven't been in the top flight in 73 years. These clubs are 5 miles apart currently. I think they'll be 6 miles apart when Brentford moves into their new stadium next year. I'm not sure which direction the new stadium is. Maybe not quite 6. But very close. Rivals, but Brentford's a club that I don't know if a lot of people really know much about, John.
No, and when you're looking at this matchup, it is divergent styles. It is the Khan family and Fulham spending money. I think that they had outspent some of their rivals by about $100 million in trying to get promoted, where if you have Brentford, you have Moneyball and analytics, and you don't have an academy, but you have a B team from players 16 to 20 that go around Europe and play friendlies with professionals.
I need more information on that because you're making that sound like it's something that doesn't happen, and reserve teams happen. Like, that's not uncommon at all.
No, I was just literally just laying out the
No, I know.
that,
what I'm saying is, like, what makes it different? Because Fulham has a reserve team. Like, everybody has a reserve team. Like,
no,
Brentford has a reserve team.
Right, but I'm just laying it in the notion of them not having an academy, but having the reserve team as a substitute for the academy.
It's not no. Let's be right here. It's not a substitute. You're not substituting developing kids with a team of 16 plus. That has nothing to do with it. Here it's a little different because if you look at Atlanta United too, it's maybe more of an extension of the academy, but it's still a professional team. And academy players play in it. It's separate. It's not academy. Bringing 16-year-olds in isn't an academy. That's bringing in prospective pros. So if they're trying to spin it that way, come on, Brentford, really? Come on. If you can't invest in an academy, that's fine. That's becoming an issue with some clubs. That's definitely true. But it's not an academy. It's a reserve team. That's what it is. So they're going out and picking up 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds that were in other academies that other teams did the development work. They can't claim they did the development work.
No.
They can claim that they might have finished it off. They might have brought somebody in and helped make them better to go to the first team. But that's not that unique. I'm gonna have to see. Now I'm definitely for Fulham. Now I don't like Brentford's messaging.
And we got into it last night on Soccer Over There, where the manager for Brentford, he wants his players to think outside the box, and his philosophy is from the All Blacks when it comes to rugby. I don't know if this means they do the haka before every single match.
I would hope not. That would look foolish.
But and then the don't be a blank head philosophy of the manager as well, to add to all of that with the money ball that has been the phraseology for how Brentford uses analytics to bring in players.
See, here's where I want to get into. Your research on Brentford, is it to try to sway people to pull for Brentford or against Brentford? Because I don't like them anymore.
I'm just presenting a case. I'm
not. No. You're picking and choosing, man. Come on. You're picking and choosing facts. I mean, the whole pinching thing, it's like, come on, that's not going to get me to like this guy.
No. As Nick said last night, somebody comes and pinches me, I'm going to haul off and bop him one.
Yeah, I mean, what was the don't be a D-head? Is that the way you said it?
Yeah, don't be a D-head.
Don't be a D-head. How many clubs have a philosophy of we like D-heads? I mean, come on. You're not reinventing the wheel here.
But this is the first time that I've actually heard it said publicly. Manager says, don't be a D-head.
You haven't heard a high school football coach say something like that? Come on now.
Probably a little more colorful, but not using the word D-head.
Yeah, there were probably other words that you can't say.
Yeah, and there was a string probably associated with it, too.
Yeah. So
string of adjectives.
I'm not buying this thing. I'm not buying it. They do have a nice crest. I will give Chris Ashley that. They have a giant B on the crest. I like that. Yes. That's cool.
Yes.
But the pinching, the fake academy / reserve team, we don't like D-heads, but I don't think anybody really does, so that's not saying much. I'm kind of just like, all right, what's the story here? I'd be happy to see them get into the top flight because they haven't been there in 73 years. Fulham is trying to get back almost immediately.
Right.
Brentford fell apart at the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
They had 2 chances to secure automatic promotion. They lost to Stoke and they lost to Barnsley at home.
Oh, that Barnsley in the last day of the season. Woof.
Then they lost the first leg to Swansea. They came back and they won in their last game at their old stadium, which is a cool story. Griffin Park, they're moving into the 18,000 community stadium, 18,000 seat community stadium. It's a mile down the road next year. Both teams play kind of variations of the 4-3-3. Brentford is a team who wants to get forward quickly. Fulham wants to play possession. They want to draw you out, hit on the counter. Brentford's had good success against Fulham. They beat them on June 20th, 2-0. It's going to be down to that same formation, but yin and yang of one team wants to play fast, one team wants to play slow. If Fulham, who has spent more money, has more to spend, has higher quality in their lineup, so they try to keep the ball to play to that side of it. If they are able to frustrate Brentford, they'll get the win. If Brentford is able to strike quickly and be dangerous and get up on Fulham, I think they'll get the win. Fulham, I think, is happier with a 1-0 win that they control. Brentford is going to need more than one goal, I think, to get through this. So Fulham's also struggled against Brentford, against Leeds. I don't have their record against the other playoff contenders, but they struggled against top teams. We'll see what they do. I guess the biggest question for Fulham is Alexander Mitrovic, their striker, was suspended for 3 games. Then he missed the semifinals due to a hamstring injury. Is he going to play here? Is he going to be available off the bench? What do they look like without him? Reading a little bit about Fulham and how they play with him, he is old school number 9, feed him with crosses. He's not really going to press much. It's kind of like Zlatan at the Galaxy, where defensively he's a passenger. Offensively, you've got to put crosses in to feed him. That's it. It's honestly pretty simple. So Fulham's possession is all to get the ball wide, put in crosses. Without him, they look differently. And have they looked better? I don't know if that's really the case. But that's a tough decision to make. Are they going to play him coming back after, it looks like 5 games that he hasn't played? Or are you going to keep rolling with what got you through the semifinals? We'll have to see what they do.
Sky is saying that Mitrovic is fit to face Brentford. I'll just say it like that.
Well, yeah, no, the decision is if you play him or not. It's not about fit at this point. He missed the semifinals due to a hamstring issue, but he's ready to go. But do you play him? He hasn't played in 5.
And then the Sunday Times is saying that playing Mitrovic against Brentford would be a tactical blunder for Fulham.
It's kind of harsh. I mean, he's had a good season, so I don't know if I'd say that. The question is, did it help you last time you played Brentford? Probably not. So do you go with something different? It's a weird one where, I mean, I think on paper you come in, you say Fulham's the favorite. But in reality, I don't know if they are, because Brentford's had their number this season. So it should be a really good match. It's two teams that play differently. That usually creates a good match in this kind of game. I don't think it's going to be wild, high scoring, any of that. I think it's going to be a very interesting match this afternoon, and there's a ton of drama. I mean, depending on who you talk to, you're talking about 170 million pounds, 160 million pounds over the next couple of years for the team that goes through. That's, for Fulham, it's big. For Brentford, it's transformational if they use it correctly. So it's going to be a very pressure-packed match. I've seen these games before where you come in, it's like, it's going to be fireworks and 4-2 and chaos. It could be scoreless and go to penalties. It really could, but the drama will be there for sure. It's going to be a fun one to watch this afternoon, ESPN Plus. 2:45, is that right?
Yep, 245. In the aggregate, courtesy of our friends at Odds Portal, Brentford is at plus 118 to win in regulation. Fulham plus 259 to win in regulation.
I would lean to Fulham on that. Not because I think they're a clear favorite and they're just not being rated correctly, just because I think it's a toss-up.
Yeah.
And that's a big number for a toss-up. So,
and for it to go longer than 90 minutes, it is plus 216.
And I would also take that. I would go Fulham in extra time is kind of where my head's at.
So that's and Nathan Pugh has been looking at the playoff all the way through, and he's in this morning. He says he couldn't care less on either Fulham or Brentford, but I feel that Fulham is better for the Prem. And then after our discussion with Brentford, he says anything that anyone can do to emulate the mighty All Blacks is a positive, the most competitive, well-organized, and best sports team in the world. Hashtag Tuesday Thoughts.
No, absolutely. And I'm not saying that it's not. I'm saying that if you're down to imitating them by doing things that is not part of your culture, that might be a little much. If they do the haka before a game, that would look incredibly foolish. Also, Brentford probably needs to develop their own thing rather than stealing everybody else's, it sounds like. Question from Nathan, too, and we've got a bunch of questions on Twitch as well. We're going to start hitting some Q&A stuff here right now. Nathan on email sent this in. We didn't get a chance to touch on it yesterday. Talking about Atlanta United, he said, with the Jonathan Gonzalez rumor twirling, and there's a little more on that from last night, we'll get into it, could Atlanta be harming themselves by chopping and changing too much? And Nathan said that he thinks more than Frank de Boer, inconsistency is what harmed Atlanta the most this season. Too many positional and player changes from year 3 to 4, casualty of a cap leak, which I would agree. I don't know how much they could have avoided that. A few examples that prove Nathan's point. Real Madrid winning 3 Champions Leagues in a row, Liverpool over the last 2 seasons, Barca dominating La Liga from 2008 for a while. They've had some ups and downs, but yeah, they've been on top for a while because they've tried to maintain consistency. But Barca is actually a good point the other way, because you also run into the situation where sometimes you hold on to that consistency too long. 2-3 years is different. I'm not saying Atlanta needed to change. Atlanta had to change because of the cap. You didn't have a choice. You can't have the consistency that Real Madrid had over 3 Champions Leagues, that Liverpool had, that Barca had over the 4 years of Pep Guardiola. MLS is built to not do that. MLS is built to where players play contracts out, need a raise. You can't keep everybody. It's just the way MLS is structured. You have to constantly reload, which makes it difficult. That does harm things. I think right now you're not settled. So any moves at the moment aren't really changing anything. Part of that's down to 2020. I mean, you've played 5 games. Yeah. It's not like you've played a long time with this group. You haven't played half a season. You haven't played half a year. You've played 5 games. You would normally be in April. So changes at that point, it's fine. I'm not worried about that. I want to see the best roster that can be built right now. And if that means bringing new faces in, bring new faces in. Take advantage of the market that's going to be interesting. Then the other part that Nathan says is when you have a lot of talent, sometimes you can't figure out who your best 11 is, which is true. But we talked about this with LAFC. Sometimes, and especially in a cap league, if you only have a best 11, if anything goes wrong, you've got problems. LAFC's done a good job in terms of preparing for the future. They added Brian Rodriguez, expecting Diego Rossi to be gone by now. Maybe he's gone in this upcoming window. And they got lucky in this tournament because they had Rodriguez, who could replace Vela, who opted out. But in general, their depth is weak. They have nothing to change the game off the bench. They have very little depth. That's going to hurt you over time, too. There's not a perfect way, and that's what this comes down to. If you have basically a starting 11, a couple of subs off the bench that are regulars, if you go 15, 14 deep on a regular basis, and you don't have any injuries, and you're able to keep everybody under contract and keep everybody healthy, that's awesome. That's some ifs, though. Like the ifs of a player who you got on a good deal, even in a non-cap league, starts to get some interest from other clubs who are like, we can pay you double what you're making. We can pay you a whole lot more money than that. So it's hard to keep everybody for that. You'd love to. In a perfect world, I think most managers would tell you they would like to have 15 to 16 players they can count on. Pep Guardiola's talked about working with, 22, which is wider than we're talking about and hard to do in MLS, but basically an option in every position because it increases the competition within the squad. So you still want a smaller squad than 30 guys competing for spots. You want a competition at every position. You hope you keep everybody healthy. You hope you can keep the group together for a period of time. The last parts are hopes, and Atlanta hasn't been able to do that in the last couple of years. You've had the Joseph injury. You've had contracts up. You've had guys who didn't want to re-sign. You've had to make deals. You are in a bit of flux right now. And I think adding Jonathan Gonzalez wouldn't really change that flux. You're still in flux.
Yeah.
Nothing's changed. You haven't gotten settled yet. So the rumors out of Mexico are that deal's getting very close. It's the same conversation. It would be a loan for the rest of this season. Not sure when the purchase trigger would happen, or if it's an option, or if it's an obligation, or if it's timed. But loan initially, and it says it's close to happening any time now. That's out of Mexican media.
Yeah, you mentioned too much change, and I mean that's part and parcel to how we are in MLS. But because right now of where we are, and you mentioned it, because we're in 2020, we're not as further along the road that we normally would be. So I think that not knowing when you're coming back to resume what you'd like to have for the remainder of your schedule, having only played a handful of matches this season, I think that you can bring ideas in, you can bring players in because of all the turnover that you've had if you're Atlanta United. I think that you can bring these added pieces in and try to figure something out.
You said you didn't know when it was coming back. Stephen Goff at the Washington Post would have an update on that. First full weekend of MLS play would occur August 21st to the 23rd. People close to the situation said yesterday. Nashville and Dallas will play August 12th to 15th, and Texas twice over that period of time. They'll make up another game at some point. Those are going to be the games to make up what they lost in the MLS's back tournament. That'll get them to their 3 regular season games that should have happened. So August 21st to 23rd, that weekend is when the first full weekend of MLS will return, according to Stephen Goff at the Washington Post.
Yeah, so I think that bringing in players in this time period where you're getting toward the rest of a schedule, I still think that you can bring players in, figure out what works where, and I think you're okay in bringing in other
You're not
guys.
settled. I mean,
No.
you've played 5 games. You're not settled. You've got a managerial change. If you're going to do anything, do it now.
Yep.
And we'll see what happens. Other stuff in Twitch, Chris Ashley is excited with multiple exclamation marks about Greenville Triumph's local TV deal.
Yeah. The upcoming match is going to be on, I want to say, the CW. It's a partnership with WSPA, the local CBS affiliate in the Tri-Market that is Greenville, Spartanburg, Asheville. And the Irwin family thought that the because of the pandemic and how things are in 2020, that they wanted to have other ways for folks to enjoy what's going on. And the upcoming match with Chattanooga is going to be on channel 62 locally. So it's good stuff to hear out of Greenville.
Yeah, CW 62, and potential to air additional matches in 2020 as well. Madison, Richmond, both have local broadcast deals in League One. Everything's on ESPN Plus still, of course, but this is an opportunity for local fans who can't attend the match and maybe aren't subscribers to ESPN Plus to be able to see the game. Would love to see more of this. We're seeing it more in the championship as well, where the national feeds from ESPN Plus are getting picked up. Some teams are putting local announcers on top of that. So there's more and more happening. That's going to help grow it. It's like we talk about with MLS a lot. Mike Conti and I get into this. Having stuff available via ESPN Plus is amazing. You can watch anything you want, so you don't have to worry about watching the rest of the MLS games. But there is a value in having stuff in traditional markets and traditional outlets. So it's very important for a prestige standpoint, to have Greenville Triumph on local TV. That makes it feel bigger. That makes it feel more important. That's only going to help your casual fan who is like, well, I'm not going to subscribe to ESPN Plus for soccer. I'm not a soccer fan. But if the game's on, they're going to watch it. And then they might buy a ticket, and they might buy a jersey, and they might buy a shirt, they might buy a scarf, they might buy a hat. All that stuff's really important. So these types of moves are very, very vital, and I think they're even more vital right now. So good on Greenville Triumph for pulling that together. Good on the CW62.
Yeah, and there's always, you mentioned the over-the-air component, and traditionally, you're looking at older demos that don't have ESPN Plus. They don't stream. They don't have those kinds of things as a part of their viewing dossier. And I think that what that does is it gives older demos the chance to sample, and then that trickles down with their family. Hey, I saw this the other day. It gives, and the hunger that we have for live sports these days, I think it also plays into this too, where we've seen the numbers for live sports go through the roof by comparison to what they're traditionally. I mean, the NHL numbers have gone through the roof. The NASCAR numbers have gone through the roof. And I think that what this does is it gives soccer the opportunity to do the same thing because of the hunger that we have for live sports. And like I said, good on the Triumph for doing something like this. And it just adds to all of that live sports that fans get to watch as well.
Can I dial something back there real quick?
Sure.
Through the roof might be a bit of an exaggeration. We've seen ratings come really good for the first game or first event back. They've been good. And, it's not that they've been bad. Even MLS, people have tried to find a way to spin the numbers to be, they're bad, they're terrible. They've been typical. Maybe people expected them to be bigger, and that's where it's like I just want to make sure that, just because you're putting a sporting event on TV doesn't mean that everybody's going to watch. You still have to do the marketing. You still have to get out there. It's a situation where even beyond, okay, you want the ratings to be better right now. How much better depends. You hope they're better. Even if they're not better, they're still important because they're giving you an opportunity, giving the station an opportunity to draw in advertisers. That It's not as much about the ratings are great compared to what previous games have been. The ratings are great compared to what else would be on. And that's the problem right now is outside of live sports, there's not a whole lot of live programming on television, period, because you can't do it. The shows haven't been able to be produced. Like, you're having to go back into the archives. It's hard right now. So sports are critical, even if the ratings are not twice as big as they were for the previous game or last season or whatever. They've been good, but I think some people have heard that, and it's like, okay, they expect the ratings to be, these astronomical figures, and they might just be typical. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. The MLS numbers created a lot of disappointment because I think people expected them to be this huge thing, and they weren't. But the demos were really good, and there were things about the numbers that were very good. Expectations can be a weird thing. And I was I guess I shouldn't be surprised to see people finding a way to slam the MLS ratings, which were fine. They weren't as good as you hoped they would be. You hoped they'd be bigger. But there were things about the numbers that were good. Those demos, when you compare the major advertising demos, the demographics, to what else was on TV, the MLS numbers were competitive with everything. And that was really important because that's who's spending the money on this. And while you want the rating to be good, that's great. It's about who's going to buy stuff that's being advertised on it. And if you're getting those people to watch, then you're in a good position. And MLS has done that. So its numbers are easily manipulated to look good or bad depending on what your stance is.
And when you're looking at target demos, I would probably say in the last decade to decade and a half, instead of looking at the aggregate ratings number of something, folks are looking at male 18 to 34, male 25 plus, male 35 to 44, those kinds of things.
18 to 49 is the typical. I don't think they're looking at much beyond that. I mean, they're looking at the overall rating because it's the overall rating, but it's the 18 to 49 in most of the ratings. They go a little bit deeper at times, sure, but 18 to 49 is the magic setup that I think anybody who's interested in ratings and learning a little bit more, those are easily found. Beyond that, you might not be able to find them publicly.
Yeah, but just in the idea over the last, say, 10 to 15 years, instead of sitting there and looking at your rating being a 2.8 and a 7, you're looking at specifically what it is in target demos with your advertisers and things like that. It's not just looking at the larger number. You're actually looking at the specifics involved with your demos in your live event.
Money makes the world go round. Advertising does for TV, and it's vital. So it's a big part of what these numbers really mean in the grand scheme of things. Questions on Twitch, questions on Twitter, questions on email, send them off. It's Tuesday Thoughts. It can go kind of anywhere, so we'll take your thoughts, your questions. JP Vita had a question about the Barstool podcast situation. Out of the loop, have no idea what happened. Can we spend a couple minutes on it? Sure. It's a situation where Atlanta United did a podcast with I don't listen to the Barstool podcast, so they have a whole bunch of podcasts. If you don't know Barstool, they have a whole bunch of podcasts and written, and they have a radio station on Sirius. They're multimedia. They're everywhere. The soccer content I haven't listened to. Sam is the Barstool representative on it. They have a former player, Eric Gehrig, former MLS player, who does a podcast with him. Sam was on the Atlanta United podcast, and there was a lot of pushback. And the pushback was not necessarily about Sam, because I haven't heard of anything specifically he's done in this realm. But Barstool has had a very problematic history in podcasts, in written, in statements given by higher-ups at the company of very problematic stances about anything you can imagine, pretty much. Race has been an issue with them. Homophobic comments have been an issue with them. Sexist comments have been an issue with them. I mean, take your pick. So the soccer content hasn't been in that issue, but it's associated with it because it's under the Barstool platform. So there was a lot of pushback. The podcast was eventually pulled, and there's been a lot of back and forth now on Twitter that has nothing to do with the actual issue. It's a lot of back and forth about blaming and who's blaming and should you be blaming, and it's gotten completely ridiculous. So that's it in a nutshell. Did I miss anything from the situation?
No, you pretty much got it down to a 45-second soundbite there. Yeah, no, that's about it.
Yeah, I mean that's what it was. People, and the thing about Barstool that is difficult when something like this happens, because I think to a degree they seek these kinds of situations because they make a lot out of them in terms of the pushback. And they have people who, I mean, Deadspin had an issue with Barstool for a long time, where Deadspin would call out Barstool on something, and then you'd have the Stoolies, who are the Barstool fans, who would just harass people on social media about it. Again, not about the initial issue. It's not even about the initial complaint. It's just about not liking Barstool, whatever. It just turns into a million different things. That's what it feels like this is kind of turning towards. It's deleted. It's not there anymore. I don't know what else to say at this point about it, but you will get people arguing about it, but they're not even arguing about the actual content right now. It's arguing about a million other things that have nothing to do with it. So
Yeah.
it's no fun seeing it and dealing with it. But, yeah, it was deleted after the pushback because the representative from Barstool is with Barstool, and they have had a number of issues. It's not hard to find to see the different issues that Barstool's had as a media company.
Yeah, no. Like I said, I'm at a loss when it comes to the actual content because I didn't listen to it, and Barstool is not something that I have in my saved channels under. That's just not where I go for any kind of content. So, like I said, I admit that I didn't listen to it, and so I think you've crystallized what the situation.
The thing is, and this is where you have to be careful. It's not about listening to the podcast that was posted. That had nothing to do with the situation. It was not about the podcast that was posted. It's not about the Barstool soccer guy in anything I've seen. Mm-hmm. It's about who he works for and the company
association.
He works for. Yes, that's what it's been about. So
yeah,
that's where it's getting all kinds of weird because of all of that. So you have to kind of drill down to what's important here. It's not about the content that was posted. That's a critical part of it.
Yeah.
Jason Nix, and if you guys got follow-ups, go for it. Jason Nix, what are your thoughts about Jim Curtin's comments? He wants to see something like the MLS's back tourney every year. Yeah, I talked about this a while back, I think. Could something like this be your Leagues Cup?
Yeah.
I kind of like that idea of being able to do something like this for a Leagues Cup format. It could be a preseason tournament. That's easy. That's an obvious one, and if it's that at a minimum, that's great. I saw some ideas about it being the final stages of the Open Cup. Maybe. I like the Leagues Cup idea the best. The preseason idea is the easiest. It's just simple. It gives everybody a place to train and do a preseason and play games in it and have a tournament to get everything kicked off. That would be a good thing, I think, for the league. If that's what you end up doing with it, I'm cool with it. But the Leagues Cup idea is what I keep coming back to that could work.
No, and I think that that's right on. I think that for me in having something like this, I think that Nations Cup is where I would have
Leagues
this
Cup,
idea.
not Nations Cup.
That Leagues Cup.
Not CONCACAF. So, don't get it confused, because then I'm mixed up. I think Atlanta's playing Guatemala or something.
No, but no, I think that this could be that substitute. I think you have it pegged right on, that it could be a fun part of the schedule, and I think that it could also mean something as well. As what we've seen is there's the interest on a bunch of different fronts. The intensity. I like seeing the intensity of a group stage and the knockouts, and I guess it's my attraction to World Cups and things like that. To have that in a bit of a microcosm here, I would think that this would be cool if you could continue it somehow.
Okay, Adam, with a question for you. For a team that gets promoted, so Brentford or Fulham, whoever gets promoted today, what's the best way to allocate those resources that you're going to get, that 160, 170 million pounds over the next couple of years?
Well, I don't think for Fulham. I think that if you're Fulham, you're going to just continue to do what you've done, because if you prove that you're going to spend 9 figures in the championship, you have your philosophy of spending, and I would
rephrase, not what they're going to do, what should they do?
What should they do?
Yeah, that's the question. What's the best way to allocate those resources?
Wow. For me, I would try to emulate something like what we've seen with Sheffield United, where you're finding players that fit what you're looking for when it comes to your system. Chris Wilder had an idea. He wanted to bring the 3-5-2 from the Championship up into the Premier League. What that meant is that you had to be sound at the back, and you had players who were more than willing to run their cleats into the ground and run themselves into the ground off the wings, and you had a solid goalkeeper who could stand on his head.
Chris Wilder did not invent the 3-5-2.
No.
He gets this credit like he invented it, and it's never been in the Premier League.
I know. It's like everybody in the Premier League is like, "Oh my God, the 3-5-2!" It's been there. What I'm saying is, be sound at the back. So I'm saying that I would invest more on your back line and find a way to have a goalkeeper that you know is going to be stout and is going to be there for you for the entire season. They were lucky that they got Dean Henderson on loan, but when you see guys like Stevens and Baldock and those guys at the
say
back,
that like it's easy.
Yeah.
Manchester United would like a goalkeeper they can count on.
Yeah, so it's
Chelsea would like a goalkeeper they can count on, and they spent plenty of money to get one.
Yeah, we're gonna go into the yellow pages and look for goalkeepers. 1-800 clean sheet.
That's not about spending. I mean, Chelsea showed that one.
But it's finding the. But what they've done is they found value in these individuals. They did spend, by comparison, I think it was like 1. I think they spent it like 150 or 180% of their previous budget. And so I think that this upcoming season for Sheffield United is going to be their test, because the guys that they brought in on value want to have an increase in salary. So it's finding those guys that fit your system, whatever you want it to be, and not blowing up the bank to bring those guys in is what we've seen with the Sheffield United.
I think it's knowing who you are. Sheffield United is not Chelsea. So they're not going to spend like Chelsea. I think What you see, a lot of teams, they get that check and they go and spend it all. And no, you can't do that. You've got to build up from the team that got you here. You know, you don't run everybody out of town. You pick a couple of spots where you can upgrade, that you need to upgrade. I agree. I think defense is one that doesn't get upgraded enough and needs to be upgraded more in this, because you're coming up from the championship. You were the 30th best team in the country, and now you're playing the best 20. You're playing more difficult competition. You need to be stronger defensively than you were. So you've got to upgrade some on the back line. But you've got to be true to who you are. And it's the ones that come up and blow all that money in a year, and then they're like, oh, well, we're going to get a parachute payment, so we'll be okay when we go back down. That doesn't do anything for you. Like, Fulham is fine financially. Fulham, if they don't go up, they're not going to go bust. If they go up, they have more resources to work with. It doesn't dramatically change Fulham. If you're Brentford, you have to know that you haven't been a Premier League club. You haven't been a First Division club in 70-plus years. You can't just all of a sudden think that you are established in that class. You've got to use this money to establish yourself in that class. You might have to go back and forth a couple of times to make it work, because you've got to dramatically upgrade what you are. Now, you're moving into an 18,000-seat stadium next year. Normally, that's great. When you're going to have fans in the stands, that's great. Right now, it doesn't really do anything for you. You've got to be very smart about that money. Honestly, I think if you're Brentford, you pick a couple of spots to upgrade, and primarily defense. You look for loans. You look for players from City, from United, from Liverpool that you can get on loan, young players that are up and coming who are hungry. You bring them into the group, and you keep some of that money in your account. Mm-hmm. So for Brentford, if Fulham goes up, I think there would be a greater likelihood they stay. Yeah. If Brentford goes up, the likelihood is they go immediately back. Yeah. So Brentford has to prepare for that and pocket money as much as they can to then reinvest and build themselves up. I don't think there's a magic, okay, you get the big check, you get promoted, this is what you do, this is the blueprint. Because every team's different. I mean, Leeds is going to approach it differently than Brentford would. Leeds is a bigger infrastructure, so they can. They have the ability to go up and stay up because they have that kind of size. Brentford doesn't. They've got to build that. So it's all different, but I'm with you on defense because I feel like it's an area that doesn't get enough love from teams that get promoted, and it's the area that's going to be impacted the most by going up. You're playing better teams. You're playing better attacks. You've got to be stronger defensively than you were, and you've got to find the way to do that. But you've got to be true to who you are. That's the number one thing. I think like Norwich is a prime example. Norwich is a club that doesn't try to play differently when they go up. They don't blow all their money when they go up. They win their way up. They go up. They play their game. If they get to stay up another year or two, great. They're a club that is a yo-yo club. That's who they are, and it's not going to change who they are. They're not going to go bust and then get relegated from the championship because they overspend. Brentford can't become that. Yeah. Brentford has to use this to establish themselves.
Yeah, Norwich has always been that club that is spending within their means. I always go back to the January transfer window quote of Daniel Farke, when everybody was asking, you're at the bottom of the table. What are you going to do to try to improve yourself for the stretch run? And he's like, well, we're paying for our past sins. We're not going to overspend. We're not going to spend beyond who we are. And so he understood this entire run that this is who we are. This is what we're going to spend. This is how we're going to approach things. This is what we're going to do. They were themselves. They did not change. I think that you will always, because of this, and as long as this philosophy stays in place, I think you're right. I think they're going to be that team that's always going to be in contention at the top of the championship if they win their way in, either with automatic promotion or through that playoff. I think they'll always be that they'll always be that team to do that. They're not going to be like a Hull City, who completely and totally overspends themselves and continues to overspend themselves and put more bad money over bad. And what does that get you? That gets you into League One after this season. They're not going to be that kind of an extreme case. And I think that as long as Brentford stays within themselves and they continue to address things as they do, then they will be who they are. But Fulham, we've known Fulham ever since the Khans came in as their owners, that he's not going to be afraid to spend money to try to get to where they want to be. So I don't see Fulham changing much. And the key is, if Brentford wins, do they change who they are? And you hope not.
Katie Weaver says, another day, another American in a final at Wembley. Hoping Tim Ream fares better than Pulisic. Christian's going to be out 4 to 5 weeks, I saw announced this morning with that hamstring injury, which is not a surprise. That would put him getting back right at the start of the next Premier League season, which is going to be a little difficult because, I don't know, you're not really going to have a preseason. You're not going to have an offseason. So whatever that looks like for Chelsea, he's not going to be even back, I think, until the season starts. So I think he'll probably miss a few weeks.
Yeah.
Abby talking about MLS, the hope from Abby is that they have strict protocols for when in-market games start, stricter than Major League Baseball. We've seen now the Marlins and the Cardinals with multiple positives within their team. You've had some others here and there, but the Marlins and the Cardinals are the Nashville and Dallas of Major League Baseball in terms of having an outbreak. Now, we don't know what happened in Nashville and Dallas. That never came out. Maybe it will eventually. Who knows? But in Miami and in St. Louis, there is reporting from reputable outlets, not just Bob Nightingale, which has some weird tweets from time to time.
Yes.
Reputable folks are saying that players went out. With the Marlins, people went out in Atlanta when they were here for the preseason games. St. Louis, reportedly, players went to a casino. It's one thing if you, and I'm talking to you as a general listener, if you go to a casino or go out for dinner or go out to do something, that's one thing, and that's going to affect the people around you. For these players, and MLS players will be in the same situation, you're affecting your teammates who you are going to be working with without social distancing, without a mask. You are potentially putting them at risk by doing something that you don't have to do right now. And for baseball players to do that, they're also putting their sport at risk, because if they continue to have outbreaks, you're going to have to stop the season. I mean, the competitive integrity of the season is gone at this point because, even with the 60-game schedule, it was a mess. But now it's like you're going to have teams that can't play 60 games. It's just how it is. And what if they are one of the best teams in baseball, or what if they're competing for a top seed or whatever? What are they going to do? Who knows? You've wrecked everything by a selfish act. It's different if you don't have all those people counting on you. But when you do, you just can't do that. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be the same for the NFL. It's going to be the same for college football. It's going to be the same for MLS. For college football, it's a different conversation because they're not getting paid to do these things, and you're putting that responsibility on them, which is not fair. And that's why you have Pac-12 players who are pushing back on that. It's not going to be easy because it's not easy for any industry to function right now without social distancing. The basics of what we know. You wear a mask, you stay 6 feet apart, you are greatly increasing your chances of not contracting the virus and not spreading the virus if you have it and you don't know it. Pretty universal knowledge at this point. Mm-hmm. You can't play sports that way, so you have to do testing, because then you isolate people who do test positive and you keep them away from the group, so they are not spreading it when they are within 6 feet and not wearing a mask when you're playing a sport, because that's not how you play a sport. But if you are going out and doing things that increase the risk of you catching that, then you're defeating the whole purpose of all of it. And it's the same for any person who works in any group where you have to work closely together, or you're working inside. We know that being inside, there's more of a risk than being outside. Things like that. There are things we know, and we have to stop acting like we don't. And there are things that are going to make this difficult for us, all of us, in terms of what we are able to do safely, what we should and shouldn't do right now, and how we manage risk for ourselves, our families, and the people we work with. I don't, and even in our broadcast situations, you know, when we did the MLS's back tournament, we were socially distanced. We were in a big room. You know, there were 3 people in the room for the most part. When we did stuff on camera, there were a couple more, but we were able to keep social distancing. When we were not on air, I had my mask on. When we do USL games, it's the same thing. It's a tighter space, but we're able to socially distance. I have the mask on unless I'm on air. Mm-hmm. And I don't go out to casinos or nightclubs right now, because even knowing that, and even though I'm able to do those things, I'm not going to put John at risk. I'm not going to put Mike at risk. I'm not going to put Miller Pope at risk when we're doing things. So that's just how we all have to think right now. And athletes are the same. You know, I mean, it's not trashing the athletes because they're selfish, but in this case, they were selfish. There was no reason why they should be going out to a party or going out to a casino right now when you know what's at stake. Not just for yourself, not just for your teammates, but for your sport. It's difficult.
And now you see what the Marlins are doing with their roster to fill in those spaces.
Yeah, they don't have a choice.
No. And what was the one-liner from Don Mattingly? Some of these guys I just met.
Well, he did. I mean, that's a fact.
Yeah, it's like there were 2 that were brought in from waivers, 7 that were brought in from the minor leagues, just, you know, a boatload of guys that were brought in, and you created this situation yourselves by being selfish and not thinking. So this is on you. And I mean that in the Florida Marlins sense, or the Miami Marlins sense.
Yeah,
Sorry,
there is a question old school. There is a question too about, and this is something that needs to be asked in any of these situations, because there's the individual responsibility part that does play into it. There's just no way to avoid that. But there's also, because it doesn't always spread from that. I mean, it could have spread for the Marlins or with the Cardinals from somebody who didn't go out and somebody who just, you know, picked up something at the store. You know, that happens too. Then the question is, what are the protocols when you're training, when you're on the bus, when you're on the plane, when you're eating meals together, when you're in the clubhouse, when you're in the locker room, all those kinds of things. Because that's why you do training the way you do right now. You limit those situations. It doesn't get talked about in this space enough, but the actual competition is far lower risk. The actual training session is far lower risk than getting dressed in the locker room with your teammates beforehand, or riding on the bus to a game, or any of those situations. Those are the biggest risk factors. Mm-hmm. So what are you doing to mitigate risk in those scenarios? Those are the spots where I think it's the easiest to slack off. But those are the spots where MLS protocols have to be the strongest. You can't just hang out in the locker room, period. Even though you're doing all the testing, even though you're doing that, we know testing results are going to be different when they're in market versus what they're getting in Orlando right now. We know there's going to be challenges. We've seen it with Major League Baseball. You have to act like people are positive. You can be 10, 20 feet away from somebody who is positive. You can walk by somebody who is positive and not catch it. Mm-hmm. This is where that whole thing about proper communication coming from the top down would be really great, because then people would understand these things. But it's not being talked about. The competition's not the issue. It's the off-the-field side of it. That's where it happens so often, and in a variety of ways. It can be an accident, but it can spread because you're not following protocols properly. It can not be an accident. It can be somebody doing something stupid that they don't need to do at this point, and it could spread because you're not following the protocols. There are so many different things that go into it. That's why you have to be so vigilant about it. MLS, when they go back into markets, it is a key. It is a key that they follow these things critically. It is so key. Go ahead.
That just to bring in the example of one of the other me's, since we're getting close to what could be football season. There are concerns from me about locker rooms for football teams. And I know that a lot of folks they want to see their National Football League teams go about their business and have full schedules and things like that. For me, there are two elements in this that I look at when it comes to that particular sport that apply here. Workout rooms, locker rooms. And there are certain things that are being done, group sizes, complete sanitation, clearing out of space, making sure that rooms are completely and totally as sanitized as they can before you have whatever your next group is. Those are always a concern for me. Social distancing in these rooms during the workouts, but the interaction in the locker rooms. And what I've seen in some guidelines is you go into a locker room, you're there to dress, and you leave. You're not there to socialize. You're not there to do anything. You're not there to do anything else that you normally would do except get dressed, put on your equipment, go outside. No loitering, no nothing. That's the only reason that locker room is open. And it goes back to the notion for me, once again, personal responsibility. Yes, there are things that we are ingrained to do when we have our days as athletes and as people. We're hanging out in the break room. We're talking to folks. We're at the water cooler doing those kinds of things. Applying that to sports, making sure that those students, that those athletes, they go in there, you're there to do that one thing and you leave. To me, those are the two biggest traffic areas that I'm always going to have my concern about. And that's where responsibility for me is tenfold, and you've really got to be locked in mentally to make sure that, okay, I know this is what I'm used to doing. I can't do this anymore. I got a job to do. I have others who are relying on me, and it goes out multiple ways. Those are just the two places for me.
Official from Kicker in Germany, the DFL announces that fans will be allowed at the start of the upcoming season, which will start in mid-September. 4 rules, though. No away fans, no alcohol, no standing sections, and all clubs must keep records of all ticket buyers in case of a positive coronavirus infection. Okay. That is being reported in Germany and Kicker. Mid-September, they're going to allow fans, but you've got some restrictions on it.
And, I mean, what we've seen so far in USL, we've seen a couple of markets. I know Hartford, I know Louisville, Tormenta in League One. I know that Chattanooga had a match where they had fans with social distancing. I'm just waiting for feedback on those and what the responses, the public responses for the team are, and how they feel that these are going when it comes to having fans back in the stands, albeit at a small percentage.
One thing that has to happen, I've seen too many pictures of fans in the front row that are getting close to that, being inside that 6 feet distance from a player on a throw-in or on a corner kick. Those are the two areas I've really seen it. And they're too close and they don't have a mask on.
Yeah.
That's got to change. If it's at a minimum, if you're going to be sitting in the front, you got to have a mask on. You should have a mask on anyway, and I think you need to get to where venues just mandate a mask. I think that's what's going to happen here. But especially in those situations, and we've seen it in USL far too often, if you're going to be that close to the field and potentially be within 6 feet of a player, make it 10 feet, make it 15 feet, whatever you want to make it for a distance to be safe, protect your players. You know, because the fans aren't being tested, and the players are. You know, player to player is not as much of an issue. Player backed up against a fan, now they're not going to be there for a long period of time. That's true. You're not within that close contact range that the CDC has. That's true. But you're increasing the risk for every period that you're doing that every time you're near that person for however long. Sometimes, for a corner, you can be standing over there for a couple of minutes. Every few seconds, you're increasing that risk. So can we just fix that part if you're going to have fans in the building? If you're not going to mandate masks for everybody, although I think most venues are now, the front rows, it's got to be non-negotiable. It has to be non-negotiable going forward.
In Louisville, they've got like a yellow card, red card situation, basically, where
I'm over the yellow. No, it should be a red card. There shouldn't be a yellow card, red card. If the rule is gonna come in, you got to wear a mask. You wear a mask. If you take your mask off because you don't want to wear the mask once you get inside, you're gone. Bye. Yeah. There's none of that. God, now I'm trying to think of some way to give them some benefit of the doubt. If you see somebody drinking or eating, and maybe you need to make it where you're not doing that, or you're not doing that in the seating area. If you see somebody doing that and they leave their mask off for a period of time, okay, maybe you go warn them. But I'm not showing a yellow card to do that, because then everybody thinks, well, okay, I get one time where I can take it off until they see me. No. If you're just coming in, not following the rules that are there, then you got to go. And that's just where it's going to be. El Mataflo's throwing shade at Cardiff, but he's one of your Swansea people, so I'm not surprised.
Yes, exactly right.
El Mataflo says, it's not fair that Fulham didn't have to play any matches to get to the final. It's all fixed, I say. Yeah. Man, you Swansea folks are vindictive.
Hey, it's the Battle of Wales, brother. That's how it is.
Man. Okay. Let's see. Adam from 816 says, do you think Grant Walls ever listened to a podcast from Sam's Army? That's the Barstool podcast. I don't know. I have no idea. I haven't. I have no problem saying that, but I haven't. I don't listen to things from that platform. That's just not something I enjoy. But I've never heard of the host of that show being accused of saying and doing the things that other people under the Barstool banner have. Which is true. I mean, at least I haven't. Maybe I've missed it, but
neither.
That does factor into it. But anyway, it is what it is. Lots of talk about that. So, you guys have been chatting this one out, which is good. Chris Ashley, MLS Nations Cup must be how the Fire plan to win the World Cup. That's a good burn on John. I like that, Chris Ashley. Good job. Now you're the bully of the day. Captain Ragamuffin says, Fulham spent all kinds of money last time. Bobble, the German guy, man, it didn't work. Sherla. They screwed my fantasy team. Down with Fulham. I hate them. Ragamuffin is not a fan of Fulham. He's pulling for Brentford. He's pulling for the Bees today.
Okay. In addition to Stephen Goff's note about finalizing plans to resume the season, the testing numbers came out for both USL Championship League One and MLS. Mm-hmm. MLS update: 246 tests administered to 241 individuals, August 1 and 2 at the host hotel. No newly confirmed positives.
246 tests to 241 individuals. That would lead you to believe there were 5 that were either inconclusive or tested positive and then were confirmed negative.
Right. USL Championship, 1,455 tests administered to players, club, and staff, 35 clubs, July 20 through 27. 4 positives from 3 clubs, so 4 positives in 1,455 tests. Then USL League One, 446 tests administered to players and club staff from 11 clubs, 3 positives from 1 team.
The USL numbers have been a lot better than I expected. When you compare the USL numbers to the general population, which USL players are living in the general population, they are far better. That's a credit to the players and the clubs, and it's a credit to the messaging. That's great, because I was really worried about it. It's still not perfect. Perfect is 0, and you want to get to 0 to where you don't have any questions. But it's been good. MLS would test more than USL has, which should make it better. Not in terms of the numbers like this, in terms of any potential risk of spread. The concern from the USL side is that because you're only testing once a week, You don't identify somebody who is positive until they've spread the virus within your group. But in that situation, USL has to be super vigilant on the way you train, the way you travel, the way you eat, team meals, all those things. You have to treat all your players as they are positive. Again, the activity has not been the issue, and that has been pretty consistent across the world in terms of studies being done, in terms of just actual results. The competition is not the spreading event. That needs to be understood. So in USL, it's not the training session, it's not the games that are the riskiest moments, it's the off-the-field stuff. It's getting ready for the game in the locker room. It's getting ready for the training session in the locker room. It's eating the meal together. It's those moments. It's right on the bus to the stadium. It's those things, or to a long trip. Those are the moments that you've got to be super vigilant. And USL has to be even more vigilant because you're testing less. So far, they've done a good job. You want to get it to zero. You want to get it to where you have no issues. That's going to be really difficult because of the society that these players are functioning in right now. But that's the goal. USL's done a great job. I'm impressed with what they've done because I did not expect the numbers would be as low as they are. I really didn't.
And I know that there are some states and some franchises, and we discussed what's been going on in New Mexico and New Mexico United.
Rehash that because we haven't gone into a whole lot of detail on it.
Okay. Right now, and I'll look after I finish
Cliff
my
notes, just the
paragraph.
basics.
Well, all right. Cliff notes. The governor of the state of New Mexico instituted a quarantine order for anyone coming in for anything that wasn't considered essential business. I don't know if that has changed in the last couple of weeks, but New Mexico United goes and plays in Colorado Springs. They leave, they bus, they come back. The governor wanted New Mexico United to quarantine. The owner for New Mexico United said, we're an essential business. We're not a sports franchise, so we can do a 2 or a 3 day, not the 14-day that you want. Right now, the city of El Paso, Texas, has also reached out to New Mexico United, and they've offered their home field for New Mexico United if a venue change is necessary where they can't get around the quarantine number.
Okay. So they're still sorting out the quarantine issue.
Right.
Okay. And it's going to happen state to state, and that complicates things for MLS. MLS isn't in New Mexico, but could another state that MLS is in have a situation like that? Yeah, I mean, you have it with Canada right now. So
California.
California's playing baseball.
Yeah, and I wonder what with California. I'm looking at counties and things like that, and is it different?
Yeah, but California's not kicking out the Dodgers and the Angels and the Giants and the A's. They're not kicking them out. They're not going to make them quarantine for 2 weeks when they come back from a trip. That's not going to happen. So they're not going to do that to the Galaxy or LAFC or the Earthquakes. Now, San Jose would maybe be the bigger question, but if the Giants and the A's are playing, I don't think you're going to get around that. So I'm not as worried about that just because I think in areas where you have baseball, if you're not putting up a fight against the baseball team, I don't think you're going to be able to do it against the MLS team. I just don't see it.
But yeah, your point about Canada, where Toronto FC was looking into possibly setting up a hub of operations in the United States after the initial thoughts about the season coming back.
You're going to have to. You don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. I mean, you can't travel back and forth across the border right now. So the idea is still what had been reported, and Stephen Goff had this in the Washington Post. The Athletic had it. I can't remember who had which elements first, but they've both had different things. The Canadian teams will play each other during the first phase, and the hope is that restriction on the border changes. I don't know if it's going to anytime soon, so the Canadian teams are going to have to pick a place in the U.S. to base to host their games. There's just not going to be a way around it. So those are all the challenges for MLS. It's probably why you don't have a schedule yet, because the Canada thing, it's happened in the last 10 days. So you've got a lot of elements that are moving at the moment. Burned, going back to what teams should do with that influx of cash if they get promoted. He said what they should do with the money is hire competent people to put a team together. Money spent on sporting director, front office, scouts, and, of course, the manager is always the best money spent. They also need to work together well. Now, if you're taking a Brentford, as they've been very big and pointing out, like they're happy with their manager and what he's done, okay, you're going to continue there. But does Brentford, they don't have an academy. Do you invest in launching an academy? That would be a smart investment. Do you invest in increasing your scouting network? Yes, because you're probably not with a Premier League level scouting department. Do you have a sporting director? You might not. It might be down to somebody else making those decisions. Can you go get one? I agree. I think those are some elements that Fulham probably has a lot of those things. You're not looking to create them from scratch because you're a bigger club. Brentford, this could be part of that foundational building that they need to do in terms of fleshing out who they are as now going from a club that has been championship or lower for 70-plus years to now being a club that is championship to Premier League and back and forth. That's a big jump. So you got to put some infrastructure in place to be able to be that club. And you can't just blow it on going to go sign a guy you think is going to score 20 goals for you and ends up scoring 8 and you get relegated and bye. You can't do that. You can't blow the money like that.
Yep.
Let's see. Lots of conversation in Twitch. Y'all are awesome. Jarrett chimes in about when I mentioned Nightingale on MLB. Just whenever you see a tweet attached to him, double check it and triple check it. Jarrett says Nightingale is the Birdie Bots every flavor beans of reporters. There's literally no telling what will come next. Jarrett and his references, even in the Twitch chat, Jarrett and the references.
Tafka's in this morning on Twitter. Tafka says, make the playoffs. That's my desire for the season. Not for MLS Cup, but for Leagues Cup. I want to have international play every season. CCL qualification may be a bit much to hope for this season.
Yeah, I mean, make the playoffs for sure. That's definitely it, because I think it's going to be pretty easy to make the playoffs. So you got to make the playoffs. You got to make the playoffs and make a run. I mean, do you have to win MLS Cup? Some people will say yeah. I'm more at this point, I want to see them play better. I want to see them put the building blocks in place to be an MLS Cup winner next year. And you're going to see years like this, I think, where this team has to reload, and maybe it's a step back. Last year, you were an MLS Cup contender. You were the 3-4 team because you lost in the conference final. So you were there last year. You didn't. That's the thing about playoffs. That's, I think, one of the big differences compared to other leagues. You have to get into the mix, and they were in the mix all the way up until the next to last game. So last year was a good year. This year, you've had a lot of changes. You've had a weird year. You've had a major injury. So is it reasonable to say this is an MLS team this year? Probably not. An MLS Cup team? Probably not. But making the playoffs and giving it a go, absolutely. That's got to be something this team does every year. But it's okay to not expect MLS Cup every single year, because that's just going to happen. That's just the reality of sports. I mean, even the Patriots expecting to win the Super Bowl every year, that got a little ridiculous after a while, because you can't. You can have a great year. You can go undefeated all year and then lose in the Super Bowl. That's the playoffs. So you got to get into the playoffs. Would love to see this team find a way into international play. I agree. There's no telling what that's going to look like this year. And if you don't this year, that's just what it is. Open Cup is probably not going to exist. If it does, it's not going to be anything we're used to. If you don't get into international play, you don't. That's just what it is. But you got to get to the playoffs, and you got to give yourself a chance to get hot and make a run. That's what you can control. So you've got to build to that. Right now, when you start playing games again, it's got to be getting better every 45 minutes. That's what I'm looking for, is every half to be better than the last.
Rich Ransom also in on Twitter this morning, and it's a soccer over there carryover from last night.
Okay.
He says, regarding Serie A talk from yesterday, wasn't the league always known as being unathletic? The number 10 was always the chubby veteran who orchestrated the midfield and just passed the ball.
Serie A is changing, but yeah, it was seen as less athletic. I think that's a definite. I think it is changing, though. But is it less athletic or less athletically demanding, maybe is a better way to put it, than MLS? I think it is.
I was just going to say, is it more defensive minded when it comes
that's like saying when I'm asking you if you want salad, you saying that you want cake. That has nothing to do with it. Being defensive, you can be a German club is defensively minded. Red Bull's defensively minded. They run a lot, but they're defensively minded. Defense isn't just sitting back. That's something we got to change the mentality of. Red Bulls and their style, pressing teams and their style, where the press is the playmaker. Jurgen Klopp said that. The press was the playmaker for him at Dortmund. It was at the beginning at Liverpool. That's defensively minded. It is. You're creating everything from your defense.
Right.
Defensively minded doesn't mean you just stand there and build a brick wall in front of the goal. That's bunkering. That's different. It's also defensively minded. But you can be defensively minded and be very active and run yourself into the ground. So, no, defense doesn't equal not running. Not at all.
I guess what I was trying to poorly articulate, knowing that pressing is an element of defense, is just more along the lines of, and I'm looking at it.
Be careful, Nick's going to come get you.
But that's fine, because I'm trying to understand it. Because the way that I'm looking at it is the teams mid-table and below. So, or say the teams say 8 and below. They know that going in against higher competition, like an Atalanta, like a Juve, Inter, what have you, they know it's going to be an uphill battle. So they don't try to be that adventurous offensively.
Have you watched the Premier League?
Oh, yeah.
Have you watched what a team does when they are 8 and below against a top team?
Oh, it's. Oof.
So then why are you slamming Italy? Nick's offended right now.
I'm not slamming
Yeah,
Italy.
you are.
I'm trying to understand the notion, or probably better articulate my idea, that when you're going up against higher competition or like a Big Six or what have you, you're going to try. And Nick said this last night. You'll get out of there with the goalless draw. What is it? 2 wounded than 1 dead. And
yeah,
I guess
but that's universal.
That.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Do you see Premier League clubs who are battling for to stay out of the relegation scrap? Do you see them going into Liverpool and being expansive and trying to play?
No.
No. Do you see teams go to Bayern Munich and try to play? No. Do you see teams go to Real Madrid and try to play? No. That's part of the difficulty of being a top team. That's not an Italian thing. The Italian thing is maybe more of the top team saying, we're not going to risk anything here. We're not going to take any chances. Yeah, we will break your legs, and we will sit and we will defend because that's who we are. And we don't care if we're a top team. We're going to play that way because that's what we do. The Italian team will have more of that. It's not about a lesser team being defensive against a top team. That's everywhere around the world. That happens in MLS. Cincinnati, prime example. The Italian, when we talk about the DNA of the different leagues and soccer cultures, the Italian DNA is more appreciative of good defending. And good defending is, for the most part, although there are variances, is different than what is good defending in Germany or what is good defending in Argentina. There's some different elements to it. So to say that, going back to Rich's original point, to say that Italy is a league that has less running, well, Bernd Erzberger pulled the numbers on it. They have less running than Germany. In the last season, teams ran less than they did in Germany. That's a fact. In terms of leagues and cultures that embrace a playmaker, that's not necessarily tied to the physical output from a league. That can be a little more cultural. Argentina has, for decades, enjoyed the enganche, the playmaker, the one everybody plays through. Messi, when he goes to Barcelona as a kid, they ask him what position he plays. He says the enganche, and they're like, what? what is that? Because in Spain, you didn't really have playmakers at that time, and it was a very Argentine term. Italy's had playmakers because they'll create a defensive structure around the playmaker, and then they go make something happen. Argentina played the 4-3-1-2 for a long time, and that was their base formation, where, in England it would be more of a 4-4-2 flat for a long time. Argentina would play the 4-3-1-2 because the one was that enganche, the playmaker, the one you played through. But that didn't mean everybody else wasn't running their socks off. They were, to feed the playmaker. So it's not simplistic. This game in that way is not simplistic comparing country to country. There's all kinds of nuance to it. So, even just the idea that Italy is more defensive than others, I think Italy appreciates good defending maybe more than others. And in their way of defending, you do have managers who have pressed and enjoy pressing and have introduced elements of pressing. You have others who have played with more of a sweeper. There's different ways to do it, but defending maybe takes a higher priority in Italy than it does in other countries, and it does in Brazil, for example. And go watch the 1982 Italy-Brazil game for that playing out in a match. Brazil just needed a result to go through. Italy had to win. Brazil couldn't defend. They couldn't just get the result that they needed and then sit and defend. They couldn't do it. They kept exposing themselves to attacks, and they lost because they couldn't be anything other than what they were. And that's what cost them being in that World Cup. And then you had a run after that where Brazil said, we can't do that again. We have to be something different. And they got more defensive. And they won a World Cup out of it in 94. But they had to get more defensive because they didn't have those other elements. And that's the story of how the game evolves. You get these interactions country to country. You get players moving from one country to another. You get managers moving from one country to another. And you get elements that come in and mutate it. The United States is the prime example of that. We don't have a one soccer DNA because you've had English influence, German influence, Latin influence, all competing with one another. And depending on where you are in the country, maybe that's what happens is you have more regional soccer DNAs where Texas might look at certain things in players that do well in Texas in youth and in clubs there, but that might be completely different than the Northeast. So it's a fascinating thing when you start to dig deeper into it and you look at the sociology of soccer around the world and how it, in a lot of cases, reflects the population and the attitudes of that country that have nothing to do with sports. That's the crazy thing about this game. You get so many elements of that. You learn about countries by the way that their national team plays or their teams play, or just how they think about soccer.
Oh, it reminds me. Let me see if I can reach back here and get it.
Well, we got something first. El Mataflow, and this is bonkers, but it's involving Diego Maradona and Ronaldinho, so it has to be bonkers. Reportedly, and this is according to Carlos Lara Porras from 710 AM radio, that Diego Maradona is trying to convince Ronaldinho to come out of retirement to play for Gimnasia once he is out of jail in Paraguay. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
That's what's happening in South America right now, and the last couple times I saw Ronaldinho on a soccer field, he's been doing these Ronaldinho and Friends games. He did one at Silverbacks Park a few years ago. Yes. He did one in Nashville. Nah, bro. He ain't ready to play in the Argentine league. I don't know. Maybe jail maybe changed him. Who knows? But it's not looking good. That would be madness. I would watch, but it would be madness.
Yes. No. Subtle plug. In the mail, you were mentioning South American soccer. In the mail, I got my copy of Jordan Floret's Red Wine and Arepas book, How Football is Becoming Venezuela's Religion. So it is 480-something pages and will probably take me a good 3 years to read. But good to get this on the doorstep the other day. I thought this was very cool by Jordan, and my copy showed up. So good stuff, subtle plug. If you want to read up on Venezuela, Jordan's got a new book.
Well, why don't you tell people where people can find it?
Well, Jordan had Well, I mean, I started in the GoFundMe, so I was a part of the original GoFundMe to make this thing happen. So I guess it was a Kickstarter project that he had. So you can probably grab it on Amazon and things like that too.
Okay.
So, yes.
I'm trying to give the plug. Go follow the False Libero on Twitter.
That too.
And redwineandarepas.bigcartel.com. That's where you can actually get the book. And I know Jordan's been working on that for quite a while. I would imagine there is some discussion of Joseph Martinez in there. I would imagine there is some discussion of lots of different elements from the national team, from club. Really good reviews coming out on it as well. So you can go find it, The False Libero, on Twitter, and the website's redwineandarepas.bigcartel.com.
8 different references to Martinez, Joseph (player) in this book.
Thank you.
That's how it's listed in the table.
It's called an index, yes.
At the index, yes. But it wasn't listed as Joseph Martinez. It was listed as Martinez, Joseph (player).
That's how the index works. Oh, wow. Good point from Ragamuffin. You want to wear a mask and come to the stadium, bring a straw. That would be a better way to do it. So good point. I mean, you're still going to have to make sure you pull the mask back down, that kind of thing. But, yeah, straw's a good idea. Mm-hmm. Katie Weaver, a word on DeAndre Yedlin and a potential MLS move. That's coming out. Not a designated player, right? ? Who needs a wing back, right back? ? I think he would be a designated player because I don't think he's coming cheap. And that's been one of the holdups and the rumors about it is, is he going to take a big pay cut to come back to MLS? And MLS teams are not exactly willing to spend big money on right backs or wing backs. So how can you find the way to make that happen? I don't think it's likely right now. I just don't see who would go in for it. LAFC could, but I don't see any way they could be able to afford it or make it work. Unless you sell Diego Rossi and they just say, you know what, we're going to bring in DeAndre Yedlin as our right back as a designated player. That would be the way. Beyond that, I don't know. They would be the team to watch more than likely because he would transform them. I think then you could play Tristan Blackman as a center back, which is not ideal, but it's better than Dejan Jakovic. And your back line just got better, and that's their number one issue. So maybe that's the way it goes. They sell Diego Rossi, they go get DeAndre Yedlin, and LAFC becomes a very difficult team to deal with.
We have not talked about Jill Ellis this morning.
Rumors in England that Jill Ellis has hit a bit of an impasse with the FA. She's been interviewed. She would seem to be the leading candidate for the England women's job. Phil Neville's contract is up at the end of next summer, although it seems like he could leave sooner than that if they hire somebody else. That whole situation's weird, and it sounds like Phil Neville's going to have some say in who follows him. The players are going to have some say, which is always a dangerous thing. And Ellis is asking for more money than the FA is comfortable paying, which right now is not really a shock because of how much money the FA's lost. I mean, they've had to lay off a bunch of people. But also the things that have come out about players not enjoying playing for Jill Ellis. There have been a group of players who've had some fairly not shocking things because I don't think this was a secret, but Sidney LaRue, not a fan. Ali Krieger, not a fan. Lots of negative commentary about Jill Ellis and her work as a manager. I've said it, I think, in both World Cups. I think Jill Ellis had a incredible roster. I think tactically, Jill Ellis is not the strongest in women's football. I think if she has great players, she can get good things out of them. But, yeah, she doesn't always relate well to the players. There's issues. I mean, she also got a lot out of Megan Rapinoe, who was your best player. She's gotten a lot out of Tobin Heath, who's one of your most talented players. She pushed Rose Lavelle through, who is one of your most talented players. So it's not all negative. Let's understand that. The people who were associated the most with these comments Sydney Leroux became a bench player, and that's probably where she should have been based off the level of talent that the U.S. had up top. Allie Krieger became a player on the outside of the pool, maybe a little bit sooner than she should have. Maybe Jill Ellis was looking for a younger option at right back, brought her back in for this last World Cup. There was a story about Allie Krieger wanting to speak to her teammates and not wanting the coaching staff in the room after the World Cup, which is a little strange, but it shows where that relationship was, which is not good at all. But England and the FA and maybe the players and, I don't know, maybe Phil Neville are all kind of like, well, is this the best hire we can get right now? I think you have to, if you're England, you have to show that you're interested because she's won back-to-back World Cups. You can't say that you're too good for that.
Yeah.
But is that the right hire for you? It might not be, because how did she win the last 2 World Cups? I think she won it because she had an incredibly talented roster. And that's not going to be the same case in England. It's a very good roster, but can she coach them up and build the relationships necessary to get there? And is she strong enough tactically? I don't think she's strong enough tactically. I don't know the relationships because I'm not in the locker room, but I don't think she's strong enough tactically. I think she lucked into the right group in Canada because the team was playing poorly. You had injuries, you had suspensions. She found a group that worked. She rolled with it. That was smart, but she lucked into the group that worked. I thought they got through in the last World Cup because of the talent. I think England outplayed them. In the semifinal, I think England was the better team. But they got through because they had the most talented players. I don't know if she would be the best option for England, but from a perception standpoint, they have to make it appear that they are considering her, because you'd be insane not to.
Yeah.
But is she the best manager in the world on the women's side? No, I don't think she is.
According to our friends at Sky, Ellis was making around $500,000 a year with the U.S. team. FA announced in June it would be making 124 redundancies to protect against a projected deficit of £300 million over the next 4 years. Next sentence, the current players as well as Neville himself will all have a say in whoever becomes the new manager. Manchester United fan Ellis and Neville are good friends, but reports have recently surfaced from the U.S. criticizing her player management skills. And the FA has shortlisted a number of candidates to succeed Neville and conducted interviews last month.
We'll see what direction they go. I think they've probably got better options that will not potentially create issues with their roster base. And that's something that they have to be worried about.
Yeah, for those that want the background on what Sydney Leroux said, there's an article at 90min.com that goes over her appearance on the Crack podcast, where she was a guest of Uguchi Onyewu and DeMarcus Beasley. And so she went into it in great detail then about her time dating all the way back to her time with the U15s and UCLA, and then the time after when she was pregnant in 2015 and 2016. And so those were the big points that she discussed on the Crack podcast.
But as I said, you do have to factor in where the two players in LaRue and Krieger were in the pool. And it's not uncommon to see players who are on the outside looking in, either the outside of the lineup and in a bench role, or the outside of the pool entirely and looking in, to not like the manager. That's not a crazy idea.
Yeah.
Sydney Leroux is not going to start over Alex Morgan in the last World Cup. And this is, leaving the pregnancy side out of it. She wasn't going to start over Alex Morgan. She wasn't going to start over Abby Wambach before that. She was probably third. Once Carly Lloyd became more of a forward than a midfielder, she was probably fourth. It's, and that's not including Lynn Williams, who Lynn Williams should have been in the mix. She wasn't. It's not including Jess McDonald. It's competitive up top, and if you're on the outside looking in, you're probably not going to like the manager too much. That's understood. I'm not as worried about that because that's individuals. I'm a little surprised it's coming out the way that it is. I don't know if it necessarily looks good for anybody involved, but tactically is where I have issues because they've been there from the beginning. The Olympics in 2016 was horrendous. That's my issue, and she won 2 World Cups. I mean, I said it going into the last World Cup. I didn't know if they were the favorite going into it. They won the thing. You have to give her a ton of credit. I think they won because they had more talent. I don't think they won because they were the better tactical team. All right, you need to tell us about our good friend Steve Apolinsky over in Decatur right about now.
I was going to give him a lot of credit on this show. Apolinsky and Associates, LLC, proud supporters of everything soccer down here in the SDH networks. Over 30 years of experience, over $40 million in judgments for clients in Georgia and Alabama wrongful death and serious injury cases. You can catch up with them a bunch of different ways. First one, the website, aa-legal.com. When you click on that URL, a pop-up window pops up. That's why I call them pop-up windows. Low right-hand corner. 24/7, 365 or 366, you can have a live chat with an individual. If there are questions that you need to have addressed, you can also do that by shooting Steve an email to his personal email account, steve at aa-legal.com. Or you can get a free consultation by giving him a buzz at 404-377-9191, recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend Magazine, top 100 firms in the state of Georgia. If you need to have a consultation, a discussion, or anything involving a wrongful death or serious injury matter, one place to go. Apolinsky & Associates, the website is aa-legal.com.
All right, I'm going to test you with something, and we'll see what happens here. Yeah, it's probably going to be bad, but we'll try it anyway.
I think it's bad. Tuesdays with Reddit.
Thank you. From France football, since we're getting crazy rumors today, Cristiano Ronaldo was hoping to sign. I didn't even say what's going on. What? I just say Cristiano Ronaldo and you start cackling like a fool?
Yeah, because...
what do you think it is then?
Well, if it's got to be something with a place that he's never been, and he has to be allegedly unhappy with his current situation at Juve, so... You said French, so I would guess, what, PSG is the next step where they pair him with Neymar?
You read France football. No, they're not going to pair him with that. Ronaldo was hoping to sign with PSG and playing with Neymar and Mbappe, but COVID changed everything. CR7, not unhappy in Turin, but he's not happy there either. So he's in the middle, okay? He feels the club may be grand, but the current squad doesn't live up to its grandeur.
Okay. So you're feeling meh about where you are.
Pretty much.
And you think that the roster needs upgrading.
Pretty much.
So you could be more happy about your current surroundings where you're currently meh.
Yes.
Would he like to give up some of his salary to bring in players to help make that roster more to his liking?
No.
That's what I figured.
I'm assuming.
That's what I figured.
Juve's not hurting for money. That's a red herring, John. They've got money to spend.
As a publicly traded company, they can manipulate the system however they see fit.
They can spend whatever they want to spend. We got another good headline we got to hit here. This is a headline from the Portsmouth News. It's the news. I'm assuming it is Portsmouth News because it's portsmouth.co.uk.
What did Pompey do this time?
Pompey didn't do anything, but the report, and they have really dumb pop-ups that cover things up. So let me hit that again.
Like our friends at the Daily Mail.
Here's your headline. Drunk drug dealer caught in crash offered cut-price cocaine if Portsmouth FC scored. That's a lot in a headline.
That's a big headline.
And in subhead, a cocaine dealer... Cocaine in all caps for some reason.
Cocaine? No, it's not just cocaine. It's cocaine.
A cocaine dealer offering half-price deals if Pompey scored was arrested after crashing his car while drunk.
Okay.
Wow.
It
gets even better. The start, driving with a fearsome machete under his passenger seat.
Hello.
The guy, Steve Jones, who's also known as Stuart Clapson, crashed his Audi A3. Okay. He had cocaine in the car. I mean, he's a dealer, so that would make sense. They check his phone, and they found Drug advertising text messages sent to 30 people.
Okay.
They found money. Again, he's a dealer, so not surprised. Among those messages was a discounted offer if Pompey scores a goal. Wow.
Oh,
I mean, he's a big fan because he's giving up money if they score.
50% off if Pompey scores. Oh, my goodness.
Wow. That's the headline of the day.
Okay, well, how about this one? Well, when you finish your thing, I'll give you another headline.
No, give me the other headline. That's it. There's nothing else. There's enough in that thing.
FIFA damage irreversible, in quotes, over investigation into Infantino.
Oh, that's just stupid. I mean, that doesn't even compare.
What a plonker.
FIFA is saying that it's horrible that Infantino is being investigated because he met with the person who was investigating him.
And apparently didn't record any minutes of the meeting.
Well, yeah, of course not, because they hoped that nobody would find out, but they did. FIFA needs to stop talking. That's just what it is. All right, more on Tuesday thoughts from lots of different places. Ricky Ricardo asking the name of the retro kit website that I've referenced a few times. retroserarezas.com. It's also there on Twitter, I believe, at retroserarezas. I will confirm that right now. Well, man, there's a bunch of these. Yes, Retros Y Rarezas. Retros y Rarezas. They're out of El Salvador, so they've got a bunch of Salvadoran stuff, national team and Alianza, but they do recreations of things. They've got some old LA Galaxy stuff with Mauricio Cienfuegos. I've got the Maradona 1986 World Cup away jersey. And they got the recreation 100% right. They didn't put his name on the back because they didn't have names on the back. They put the old Argentine Federation badge on it because that's what they put on that shirt, because they went and they bought a bunch of like light mesh kind of shirts because it was super hot in Mexico City. And the Navy kit that Le Coq Sportif had given them, they wore against Uruguay, and it was very heavy and thick, and they didn't want to wear that for a noon kickoff against England. So they went to shops in Mexico City and found these jerseys and then put Le Coq Sportif on it. It wasn't a Le Coq Sportif jersey. And I guess they didn't have the new badges because the badge had changed a little bit. So they put the old Argentine Federation badge on it. But the recreation, they nailed it. So that was what sold me on them. They've got stuff from Romario, stuff from South American teams, stuff from Ruud Gullit. World Cup stuff. I've got a Johan Cruyff one as well, which they also nailed because he took one of the 3 stripes off of the sleeves because he was a Puma player, not an Adidas player. So their recreations, they put some time into it, and it's good price. The shipping's quick. They're very cool. So Retros y Rarezas.
Okay. Before we go any further, this is a visual, so this will help out our friends on Twitch. From the Swickster, who's in this morning, and let me show you. He says, in our straws discussion.
Oh, yeah.
He says, thinking of straws, how long until one of these is Atlanta United branded? And I'll show it to you.
I'm surprised there isn't one. Well, you don't wear batting helmets in soccer, first off, so you'd probably have to change the structure of the helmet.
So Swickster's wondering about the branding of when that could go down.
There will be some kind of a helmet with beer on the sides and straws, and you'll probably have a mask attached to it. So it'll be like a football helmet kind of thing. I guess if you want to do it soccer specific, you need to do it like the rugby kind of helmet that goalkeepers will wear occasionally and field players will also wear occasionally. Get one of those, put the beer holsters on the side, have a mask in the front as well, but have the straw that goes in that's sealed. It's a lot of work, but if somebody came up with it, I'll bet you would sell them as people come back into venues. So go for it. Just cut me, give me one for free at least.
Get a percentage.
Nah, just give me one for free. That's fine. I'm not going to ask for too much. I'm not creating the thing.
Oh, and that reminds me. Go to our Teespring store and you can get our stuff.
You can. You can get our NWO-influenced gear, thanks to Chris Ashley. You can get other shirts. You can get a NWO-inspired fanny pack. You can get the Panqueques shirt, you can get all kinds of different things over at teespring.com/soccer-down-here, or you could just go to soccerdownhere.net and click the link. That'll take you there as well.
Yes. It appears that Alexis Sanchez's time at Manchester United is done, or at least it's getting close anyway.
Well, that's nothing new. He hadn't been there in a minute. He's on loan at Inter, and there's reports that he'll go to Inter on a free, essentially. They'll have him. Fine.
It's like, yeah, take it, go.
Yeah, there's reports of that. I think some of that could be tied to Antonio Conte and if he's going to stay at Inter, and that seems to be touch and go every day. Europa League starts back what day this week? Thursday?
Thursday.
Okay. And those will be available on CBS All Access?
I believe that is accurate, yes.
Okay.
I was dropping the $6 a month. $6 or $7? I forget.
6.
Yeah, because I was dropping the $6 a month for the NWSL Challenge Cup. You get that word that they're going to have Europa in Champions League, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to stick with it. So, yeah, I was going to be that guy for the 30-day free, and then all of a sudden they drop this other news on you, and I'm like, okay, yeah, you got me.
I was already in. Alex Pacine is waiting on his Soccer Down Here 6 shirt to arrive, and Ricky Ricardo's checking out the Alexi Lawless shirt on Retro ZR Races. They did the 94 World Cup shirt. It's a good one, too. So, Europa League starts tomorrow. That's what I was thinking. I thought there were some games tomorrow. I think Thursday there's more, but let me look at it. So, yeah, tomorrow you've got
Copenhagen, Başakşehir, Shakhtar, Wolfsburg, Inter, Getafe, and Manchester United and Lask.
Yes, thank you, Johannes, for checking us on that.
Cool.
What am I looking for? Probably the Manchester United game at 3 o'clock. Inter Getafe is an interesting one as well.
Minus 417 in the aggregate, Manchester United to win. They're up 5-0 in the aggregate, I think, right now.
I think they'll be okay. Thursday in the early round of games, you've got Sevilla and Roma and Leverkusen and Rangers. The later games, you've got Wolves and Olympiacos and Basel and Eintracht Frankfurt.
Yep.
That's the 3 o'clocks.
Yep. So I will have multiple devices going all at the same time, if not watching on
It's just two. Just two at a time.
I've got. I'll have the computer going here. I'll have the big screen, probably with the Spanish commentary on the big TV here in Office HD.
That's all you need. You're good. Not too many. Don't get out of control. It's just a couple. I guess tomorrow, if you want to watch the Swedish league, you might need an extra device. They're on ESPN Plus at the same time.
That's a bit of a stretch for me. I kind of draw my limit. All right, let me ask you this. Where do you draw your limits when it comes to...
I don't watch as much nonsense as you. You have no limits, so don't even start acting like you wouldn't watch the Swedish league. You would watch the Swedish league.
I have not watched the Swedish league, and I will not watch
you watch the Belarusian league, so why are you getting mad about Sweden?
Because...
What do you have against ABBA?
I have zero against ABBA.
That's what I'm saying.
Underappreciated bands ever.
That's a stretch as well, but go ahead.
No, I'll watch the Belarusian league because it's new, it's different, and there's no commentary, so I can just have it on as Nat sound in the room over off to my left while we're doing the show.
But you draw the line at the Swedish league.
Yeah,
You watch Australia?
Not at 3 o'clock in the morning.
You watch the Chinese Super League?
No, because once again, that's like middle of the night. I'd have to be awake. I have to be awake to watch a league. I can't quite do that.
Okay.
I will stay up late and watch Australian rules football because it's like late on a weekend and we all go to bed late anyway.
Uh-huh.
I'll watch that stuff because that comes on at like 11:30 and I'll usually fall asleep to that.
The A-League comes on at the same time a lot of times too.
So, but that means I'd have to be in front of a device instead of a television. So it's usually whatever's on the TV late if I'm watching because the Liga MX game, because of rain delay, started at like 10:50 last night. Mm-hmm. The back end of the doubleheader.
Kefsi is a big fan of Djurgårdens in Sweden. He's trying to convince you to watch them.
I can be swayed if I'm sitting here at the desk.
Well, it's 1 o'clock tomorrow, so you can report back on Malmo and Helsingborg.
But if I'm watching Europa League at 1 and I've got two things going,
you got multiple devices. You can keep up with everything going on. You'll be okay.
You're really trusting my my level of.
Yes, I'm expecting a book report on Thursday, and I'm expecting a report tomorrow morning on the Chinese Super League match that kicks off at 6 tomorrow.
Chinese. Oh, that reminds me. what we talked about last night on Soccer Over There. We want to let the folks know about that here on this show for the folks who missed it last night.
I'm waiting for you to do it.
Oh, well, everybody has their team. And what we are going to start doing on Soccer Over There.
We talked about a lot of things on Soccer Over There. I didn't know which one you were talking about, so I was waiting for you to go with it. You went with one that I didn't expect, but go ahead.
Just everybody has their team. And we're going to be doing updates on Soccer Over There and posting them to the network, I guess, about our favorite teams. And I'm going to be doing Swansea updates in the new season. Jarrett's going to be doing Celtic updates. Jason's going to be doing updates on Defensa y Justicia. Nick is going to be who did Nick decide he was going to be doing stuff with?
The team that he you forgot the team that he loves?
Yeah, I did. Because I always get it confused, and then he yells at me because I picked the wrong team in the city.
Oh, good grief!
Pick one. Yes. Just pick it so you can get yourself in trouble.
Roma.
Okay.
Inter Milan.
Okay. Nick.
Lecce. Spal.
I hope you're listening, Nick. Yeah. John, it's nice knowing you.
Yep.
Nick knows people.
I know he does, so I do too.
No, you know people that don't know what Nick's people know. Oh, boy. Okay, let's get caught up on other stuff because, wow. Iker Casillas is retiring from football. 39 years old. Hasn't played since he had a heart attack, but I think was training. I think he was still around the team this year. 725 appearances for Real Madrid during a 16-year career. People are just losing it in the Twitch chat at you, John. 16-year career at Real Madrid for Casillas, 3 Champions League titles, 5 La Liga crowns, World Cup winner in 2010, back-to-back European championships in 2008 and 12. I don't know if the best goalkeeper of the modern times. I think there are others who will fight that out, but definitely in that conversation. No question about it. Iker Casillas was amazing for Real Madrid for a long period of time, and for Spain.
So who would be in that? Neuer, Casillas, who else?
Buffon.
Yeah.
Depends on what you want to define as the era. Peter Schmeichel, I think, could be in that era because of what he won in the Premier League. He won a European Championship with Denmark. You could put Dida from Brazil in that conversation. He's got World Cup. He's got Champions League. Those are the ones that come to mind. Oliver Kahn, that's the other one, sorry. Oliver Kahn with what he did. Casillas is right there. I think it's more about preference. I'd probably lean Buffon, personally.
And
Chris Ashley.
Oh?
If Zlatan is the Ric Flair of soccer, John may be the R-Truth of SDH. That is so accurate. If you're not a wrestling fan, you're not going to enjoy that reference as much as me, but that is so accurate.
Ricky Ricardo's in this morning linking to a story. The Dutch FA is going to allow women to join the men's first team under a pilot program.
In the 10th division.
Ninth tier.
Okay, 9th division. Sorry, that made a big difference. What is the 9th division of Dutch football? Is that like playing at Silverbacks Park? Don't know. I don't know what it. I mean, it's a pilot program for what? I don't know what it really means. This becomes a real hot button issue, and it shouldn't. If a player, and it happened in Mexico, a player played for the Atlanta Beat. Maribel Dominguez wanted to play for a second or a third division team in Mexico. And there was a lot of back and forth, no, she can't play. No, that's not allowed. They can't register her and all these different things. If she's good enough to play at the level, she's good enough to play at the level. I don't care. Is she good enough to play at the level, and does she want to play at that level instead of playing in a women's league? If she's good enough to play, play. but it's the ninth tier. I mean, that's like not even semi-pro. So what does it really mean? It's a good headline. It means nothing. It means nothing. It's playing in a Sunday league team kind of thing. And that's fine. There's definitely women who can play at that level. There's no reason why women can't play at that level. Some people are going to be stupid and have a problem with it, but if they can play, if they can hang at that level, they can hang at that level. I don't have a problem with it. Yep. But it's like it's not anything worth. It's not anything worth really even getting into because it's the equivalent here. If you look at in this country, because you don't have that many levels. You have MLS as 1. You have USL Championship as 2. You have NISA and USL League 1 as 3. You have the USL League 2 as 4. If you want to put NPSL at that level, UPSL at that level, fine, because they're national leagues that operate regionally. UPSL has divisions that would be the equivalent of the 5th division that are more localized. You have regional leagues that you could put at the 5th level, you could put at the 6th level. ADASL would probably be right around there as a local league. It is purely a local league. You have leagues like that all over the country. I don't know what a 9th tier would be in this country to find an equivalent. Like it would be like a local recreational league, which women play in with men. So it's yes, it's more structured because of the way the FA works in other countries and that kind of thing. It's a much smaller country, so you have more oversight, but it doesn't change anything about anything. It's a pilot program for what?
Girls and young women are able to play Category A mixed football up to under 19 level, but after that they have to play with Category B teams. Dutch FA says they will monitor the progress of the pilot, and should it be successful, look at permanently changing the regulations to allow women to play alongside men. Director of Football Development at the KNVB, Art Longeler, said, quote, "Every year there's a request from an association to let a woman play football in their first men's team. In my opinion, it is special that girls at all levels can play mixed football, but as soon as boys move on from under 19 to Category A of the men, they have to play football without the woman in their team. The KNVB stands for diversity and equality. We believe that there should be room for everyone in every way," end quote.
If they're good enough to play, they play. I don't have a problem with it. It's, if they want to play there, if they want to play in whatever the 9th tier is of the men as opposed to playing in the 2nd tier, because I'm assuming it's not a first tier player, like a first division Dutch female player. It's not a national team contender. Because they wouldn't be going to play in the 9th tier on the men's side. They would be playing with women to be part of the national team picture. So if they'd rather play in the 9th tier of the men than the 2nd or 3rd or 4th or whatever the tier is of the women, fine. If they're good enough to play, they play. I don't have a problem with it.
And Nick is correcting me on his side.
Well, yeah, he should. He should be throwing things at you and like, calling people to come have a conversation with you and threaten your kneecaps.
Yeah. He posted a GIF that did not have Zlatan in that particular jersey, though.
And now you're gonna fight all of Milan?
No.
They're a little bit more than Zlatan.
Well, but he got them. He got them and the bunch of their young bucks from like 16th to their finish. So he did really well at the age of 39.
Have you heard of? No, I just got to hit this one for you.
Have you ever seen anybody play the game called soccer?
Apparently not.
Champions Leagues, those things, the big trophy. They got a few of those. Serie A titles, they got a few of those. A few legends. They're a lot more than Zlatan. That's rather insulting to a Knicks club. He's definitely calling the people who talk about kneecaps.
Okay. He said, "I'll be waiting. I'll be waiting here in the office."
You probably should leave.
Well, I'm right here. I know where I live. Do they know where I live? I'm sure that Nick will be able to tell them very quickly.
It's a good thing you do the show sitting down. Let's just put it that way.
Swixter is recommending a $30 Amazon Fire Stick. Hook up to the TV, a great option for stream games on a big screen.
I have the Fire TV, and yeah, I love the setup with Amazon on it. I didn't do the Fire Stick. I had the Chromecast, and we still have one on our other TV. It's okay. streaming quality at times wasn't great. So if the streaming quality is better with the Fire Stick, 100% I agree. But the Fire TV, which has it all built in, has been awesome for games. The ESPN app there, great. Fanati's app there, great. Those are the main ones. The CBS All Access app is okay. It sometimes stutters out on me a little bit, and it's a bit of a problem. But it's easy just to flip around and watch whatever I want to watch. So if the stick is just as good, I agree. The Amazon setup for their apps has been the best one for me with all this stuff.
And the Telegraph has come out with a story. Jurgen Klopp signs a deal with Adidas as Liverpool starts their lucrative Nike sponsorship.
Well, that's just being a rebel, isn't it?
Signed a personal endorsement deal with Adidas, and this is from Sam Wallace at the Telegraph, that underlines his unique commercial appeal in the same summer that Liverpool will begin their lucrative kit deal with the German sportswear company's key rival, Nike.
Get that money, Jurgen Klopp, but also anger your club's sponsor.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, is this going to turn into a situation? Jay Heaps had this deal with I don't know how it came up with Jay Heaps, but you would see Jay Heaps in a Nike polo, not a team polo, on the bench for the New England Revolution, which was weird. I think we've seen it occasionally in college, but it's been a while because usually they're doing these all-encompassing equipment deals now. So that's... I don't know. I don't love it because, I mean, what are you going to do? Is he going to wear an Adidas shirt?
Yeah, is he going to be on the touchline wearing Adidas gear with all of his guys wearing Nike kits?
I mean, if I'm Nike, I'm going to be furious.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to have to wear like non-branded stuff, I would assume, but maybe he's big enough to where he can say, well, I'm just going to wear a red Adidas polo instead, or I'm going to wear a black Adidas polo, and that's it. Feels kind of selfish.
Yeah, so that's. I want to see how this pans out. I want to see how all of this. Does he have to wear? Is he going to wear like a Nike polo and put tape over the Nike swoosh, or stuff like that? I want to see how this all pans out.
I don't like the sound of that at all. Ricky, and I was trying to think of it. Ricky says, doesn't Mourinho have something similar? I think that's the one I was blanking on. I know Jay Heaps did in MLS because it was really strange, and I never heard the details on it. Mourinho, is it Adidas that he's got the deal with too? I just don't like it. I guess it's one thing if you are going to constantly on the sideline. It's easy. I mean, you can wear a suit. It's fine. You don't have to wear the polo stuff. You don't have to wear a warm up, but when you're doing training and people are going to take pictures, because that's a big part of all this now, is he seriously not going to wear team gear? Like,
yep.
That's selfish. That's putting yourself separate from the team. I mean, I hope the money's worth it, but that's a bad look. I don't like it if it's Mourinho, if it's Klopp. I don't like it if it's anybody.
Thanksgiving 2019, Adidas gives special treatment to Jose Mourinho and will not dump him as their 250,000 euro a season ambassador, despite him joining Nike-sponsored Tottenham.
Okay. But I don't know the terms of it. I'd have to go back and look. I'm pretty sure I've seen him wearing Tottenham gear.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the question. If it's not a situation where Adidas is saying, Klopp, you have to wear Nike stuff. You can't wear Adidas stuff. Or you have to wear Adidas stuff, not Nike stuff. If it's just, hey, he's a sponsor for Adidas and he wears the Nike stuff with the team, then that's fine. But if it gets to the point, it's like, no, I'm not going to wear the team-issued gear because I am a spokesperson for somebody else, that's being selfish.
Yeah, there are photos of him wearing his Spurs Nike apparel, but he's wearing Adidas Predator boots. So,
that's nothing. That's what players have. That's fine. I mean, that's typical.
Yeah. So I will. Here's a side-by-side photo from the Daily Mail of Mourinho wearing his Tottenham Nike stuff and his Adidas stuff in public. So
yeah, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. If it's that kind of deal, then it's fine. It's going to be a situation where if there's issues wearing the team gear, then no, that's not okay. Yeah. I would hope that Liverpool and Nike have a deal to do that.
Yeah, So that's, like I said, I just want to see the logistics of how this lays out. So
Yes.
What else is on your plate this morning? What else is going on the Twitch?
Everybody's talking about Jurgen Klopp and unique commercial appeal not being phrases that you would normally hear together, which I agree with. Couple transfer rumors to keep an eye on. There are reports that West Ham could be trying to bring in Martin Braithwaite from Barcelona. Barca's trying to get about 20 million euro on him. Pretty good flip and turn if you're Barcelona on that. Bild in Germany is reporting that Jadon Sancho has agreed on a 5-year contract with Manchester United, earning 17.6 million euro per year. They also haven't even gotten to a transfer fee with Borussia Dortmund yet, so all that's great, but you got to get the transfer done. Fabrizio Romano is reporting that Ferran Torres is headed to Manchester City from Valencia. They've agreed on a contract through June of 25, and the transfer would be 27 million euro with some add-ons. So the silly season is starting to ramp up as the UEFA competitions get completed over the next few weeks. You're looking at Premier League starting on September 12. You're looking at Serie A starting on September 19. I would assume that the Bundesliga is going to start on one of those two dates. La Liga, I don't know if they've announced it yet, but it'd probably be one of those two dates. And they're trying to end at a fairly normal time. So they're starting later than usual. They're going to end about the same time. The next season is going to be compressed as well. That's why you're going to have the 5 substitutions continue. It's going to be fascinating to see how all this plays out. But this upcoming window, with everything going on with Europa League, with Champions League, that'll affect it, with teams having a very short rest period, with teams needing to bring in revenue desperately, with players looking to move quickly, it's going to be chaos. And it's going to be chaos on this side, too. I mean, MLS is going to be involved. You could see moves with Mexico. You're going to see moves with South America, too, because some leagues have restart dates, some don't. Some teams are training, some aren't. You have the Libertadores starting back in September, but Argentine clubs aren't training yet, so you're going to see a lot of movement. Silly season is going to be really silly.
Wasn't Martin Braithwaite the player that Barca plucked from another team in the league because they had a vacancy and barely paid like a mere pittance? That's a good flip for them. That's a good investment.
Well, no, they didn't pay a mere pittance. Let's not put it that way. They paid the reserve clause. And that's the thing about reserve clauses, because in La Liga there was a rule that if you could somehow prove that a player was lost for the season, you could add a player from within the league outside of the transfer window. The only reason they could go get Braithwaite was because he had a reserve clause. So otherwise they would have had to negotiate with a club. But he had a number that if you paid it, you can have him. And they paid it, and they got him. So I don't think it was nothing. I want to say it was in the 8 to 10 million range. But if they're going to be able to flip him, yeah, it's a good deal. It's a bad contract being structured for to have that low of a reserve clause that then you're going to be able to flip him and actually make money on it. But what was stupid about that whole rule was that the club so if you have the injury, you can go poach somebody from somebody else in your league and bring them in. If they have a reserve clause, you can just pay the reserve clause. Otherwise, you're negotiating. But the club that loses a player isn't able to go replace them from within the league. You don't create like a set of dominoes. But because of the poor contract being structured, they lost the player and they couldn't go replace him. So it's a stupid rule to begin with, but the club who lost the player also has to be blamed in this because they set a reserve clause on this player that was manageable for somebody to come hit in this point.
He was with Leganés, and his release clause was 18 million euro in February.
Oh, so then 18 million to 20 million, you're basically getting your money back. That's not a big deal. So anyway, like the reserve clause, that's the only reason why this happened. Because otherwise, Leganés is going to say, no, we don't want your money. We need him. No, we're not going to sell him. But because there's a reserve clause, that triggers a sale, period. There's no negotiation. So that's what happened.
Yeah, and the fact that there's no dominoes here where Leganés can't grab another guy.
But you can't do that. The whole rule is stupid to begin with, because you can't do that because then you just keep doing it in perpetuity.
Yeah.
Because then Leganés loses a player, so then they're like, okay, well, we're going to go pick this guy who's on a reserve clause. We're going to take that $18 million we just got, and we're going to go spend it over here, and then they go spend it somewhere else, and they go spend it somewhere else, and it's stupid. It's a stupid rule to begin with. Come on, La Liga. All right, couple of questions before we wrap up. If there's anything on Twitter, get it ready. Jason Nix, does Atlanta United sell anybody before we start back? Jason says, Barco's the main target, I would think, but I haven't seen much lately. Pitty's value has dropped in the last 18 months, so I wouldn't think they would look to move him. Barco would be the biggest one, but it has gotten quiet. The conversations that he had with media in Argentina were pre the MLS's back tournament about clubs inquiring with his agent. It's kind of like the Jadon Sancho situation where they've negotiated a contract between Manchester United and Sancho, but he's a Dortmund player. They have to do the transfer. I think people were like, oh, well, there's nothing happening because they haven't talked to the club. But if the player's not interested in coming, you're not going to talk to the club. So you're sounding out the agent. That's kind of how this stuff goes. Fiorentina was mentioned. Ligue 1 clubs that Barco did not mention by name, later reported Lyon was one of them. It's been quiet. So could it happen? Absolutely. I mean, those are both clubs that I think will be spending in this window. Will they spend on Barco? We don't know. Diego Rossi has been mentioned with Fiorentina as well. You could see them being very active. Just have to wait and see. Pitty's one that I don't expect in this window. I think Barco in the next couple of windows is fairly likely. I think Pitty in the next couple of windows, but maybe not this one, possible. I think there's others who will draw interest. I think this window is going to get really weird with interest across the board. So, Jonathan Gonzalez is a player that I would not have considered being available at the beginning of the year. So if you're able to bring him in, then that starts a domino effect in a lot of ways. If you can go get him, somebody's got to go out on the other side. Moves start to happen and things start to get done. So other MLS teams, I think, could be active too. DC United said they probably won't be. At least that's what Ben Olsen told Stephen Goff. Will others? LAFC's one you got to look at. I can't believe they haven't replaced Walker Zimmerman yet. Yeah. And Diego Rossi potentially going out on the other side. There's other teams that could be active. Houston, Albert Ellis has been linked with moves. Brendan Aronson's been linked with moves from Philadelphia. You're going to see teams in this league, I think, get kind of weird in this upcoming window. And it's going to be strange because the other part that complicates it is how quickly can you get players in? Or you're making moves because players become available and they could become available at a good price, but can you bring somebody in easily? Now's not an easy time to do that. So what does that look like? We'll have to wait and see. Good point about Leganés. They also got relegated after losing Braithwaite because they couldn't replace him. Doesn't help. Javier Aguirre lost his job, and he ends up on a list of managers who are out of work, who could be attached to Atlanta United potentially. He's on the list. We'll see who else is on the list. We'll see when that list starts to get talked about a little bit more because I'm seeing lots of speculation about the lists, but we're not hearing anything about next steps yet, which isn't a surprise because, again, can't really have a normal job interview right now.
Yeah.
So we will wait and see. Today, you've got ESPN Plus, you've got Fulham and Brentford. I'm not pulling for the pinching manager. I am not pulling for the team that we don't have an academy, but we have a reserve team, and yippee, good for you. I'm pulling for Fulham. I am pulling for the team of Brian McBride and Clint Dempsey and Carlos Bocanegra and Casey Keller and Marcus Hanneman and Eddie Johnson. And, man, how many other Americans played at Fulham? There's been a lot. Tim Ream right now. There's been a lot. So I have to pull for Fulham. We will see if Fulham gets back to the Premier League, or we'll see if Brentford gets in for the first time in 70-plus years. We'll talk about that on tomorrow's show. We'll get you ready for the first semifinal of the MLS's back tournament. I'm going to need a different drop for the you just made the list thing about managers, Chris Ashley. I'm definitely going to need to pull that. I've got one that I want a little bit better fit, so I'll work on it. I'll try to have one for tomorrow because I can see this is going to be a thing.
Here's your list of Americans that have played for Fulham. McBride, Dempsey, Boca, Casey Keller, Marcus Hahnemann, Eddie Lewis, Emerson
Eddie
Hyndman.
Lewis. Okay, who did I miss? Eddie Lewis, Emerson Hyndman.
Eddie Johnson.
I got Eddie Johnson.
So there you go.
Tim Ream. You missed Tim Ream.
Well, I'm staring at that bastion of journalistic integrity, the Wikipedia.
But Tim Ream's on the team right now.
Yes, and Luca de la Torre.
Oh, yeah. I think he was on loan, or was he there and then they loaned him out? I can't remember. Yeah, that's a good one. Okay. So even more than I thought.
10.
Good. Fulham. They're going to win today. That's what I think anyway. In extra time, 1-0.
They're still at that plus 261 number for.
I like it. I'm taking it.
All right.
I'm putting the apple juice boxes on Fulham to get through an extra
Apple
time.
Juice box.
So I'm doing the parlay of the extra time and the Fulham win.
Okay.
1-0. So I'm taking the under as well because I'm sure the over-under number is more than 1.
Well, let's check the total since we're on that. The OU is the over-under of 2 in the aggregate is minus 135, and then it changes at 2.25 to the plus side.
Well, I'm going the under, so it doesn't matter. I'm doing the trifecta with the apple juice boxes of the under, the overtime, and the Fulham win.
Okay.
And we'll see if I get more apple juice boxes tomorrow.
There you go.
All right. Anything else before we go?
Nope, we're caught up on the Twitters, and thanks, Swickster, for the $30 Amazon Fire Stick idea.
Yeah, you need one of those. I don't know how you're currently doing your streaming and stuff.
Through our cable provider, and
that's not how streaming works, John.
It that way.
That's not how it works. How do you watch ESPN Plus on your TV?
I don't want.
You don't watch ESPN Plus on your TV.
I watch it on computers. Or I watch it on my Teleo phone.
When we're all able to actually have like tech support and go help John watch ESPN Plus on TV, it'll be a glorious day. Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I just watch it on the computers and on the mobile device. I do not watch it on the big screen.
Adios mio. It's time to go. Somebody help John with technology, please, and keep him safe from Nick's henchmen who are going to be upset with his dismissal
Small
of
Weekly.
Yeah, something like that. We'll be back tomorrow with more ridiculousness and more talk about soccer, maybe, possibly. So, adios. Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata, y'all.